All right, welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right into this elite tactical blueprint we've got mapped out for you today. We're looking at the 2026 preseason finale between the Arizona Cardinals and the Green Bay Packers. It's Friday, August 28th, under the lights at Lambeau Field. But, if you strip away that iconic venue and the whole preseason label, what we actually have here is a genuinely fascinating laboratory. It's a massive test of roster depth, operational execution, and some incredibly specific micro-level scheme evaluation.
And that brings us directly to our central tactical question for this matchup. Because these two teams held a joint practice just prior to this game, the established starters, including Green Bay's Jordan Love, are completely sitting this one out. So here's the question. Can backup operational execution overcome the absence of a starter's tactical script? This entire explainer is going to focus on exactly that. We are looking at a pure battle of reserve execution where the tactical blueprint is suddenly thrust into the hands of the secondary roster.
Okay, Section 1. Let's look at the preseason context and player availability.
There is just a sheer, crazy amount of inside knowledge across the field today. First off, you have Arizona's new head coach, Mike LaFleur, going head-to-head against his brother, Green Bay head coach Matt LaFleur. And if that wasn't enough, add in Green Bay's defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, who is literally facing the very Arizona team he head coached through 2025. This deep familiarity on the sidelines basically eliminates schematic surprises, which means execution is quite literally everything today. On the roster side, Green Bay is being completely transparent with us. The starters are resting, and the focus is squarely on backup quarterbacks Tyrod Taylor and Kyle McCord. Meanwhile, Arizona is bringing massive uncertainty under center. Just look at last week. Gardner Minshew started, Jacoby Brissett sat out entirely, and Carson Beck had sore ribs. So we're looking at a highly documented, incredibly clear Green Bay plan versus a completely unverified Arizona rotation.
Moving on to Section 2, let's talk historical baselines and efficiency.
Now, before we really dive into these numbers, I want to give a quick warning. These 2025 metrics reflect a past first-team identity, absolutely not the backup reality we're going to see on Friday. But they still do a great job illustrating the historical gap between these two franchises. Look right there at Green Bay's 2025 offensive efficiency. They rank fourth in the entire league with a plus 0.10 expected points added, or EPA per play. That elite metric was driven largely by an incredible passing game. Now contrast that with Arizona. They were sitting all the way down at 23rd offensively with a negative 0.02 EPA per play and honestly struggling defensively at 27th. Just remember, this is historical context for a Jordan Love-led offense. You absolutely cannot just transplant these numbers into a game played by Tyrod Taylor or Kyle McCord behind a totally reserved offensive line.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is how well these backup units maintain what we call success rate. By definition, this just means gaining a required percentage of yards for a new first down, keeping your offense on schedule, and, most importantly, avoiding catastrophic negative plays like sacks or turnovers. Last year, Green Bay boasted a really strong 46.73% success rate, right alongside a super low 5.23% sack rate. If the Packers' backups want to replicate this on Friday, they can't go out there relying on deep, improvised, high degree of difficulty throws. They're going to need a much smaller decision menu. We're talking quick rhythm throws, high percentage checkdowns, and really well-protected play action just to avoid those drive-killing sacks.
All right, Section 3. Let's break down 3 key tactical duels.
For this game, we are monitoring 3 very specific micro-level battles. First up, we've got Green Bay's backup quarterbacks trying to navigate Arizona's pressure packages. Second, we're watching Green Bay's reserve offensive tackles trying to hold up against the Cardinals' defensive front. And third, we're looking at Arizona's depth skill players testing the discipline of Green Bay's reserve secondary out in space. Like we said, this matchup is entirely about disciplined execution rather than flashy individual star power.
Let's look a little closer at that quarterback battle. As we know, Green Bay has that documented plan utilizing veterans Tyrod Taylor and Kyle McCord. Their task on the field is entirely diagnostic. The big question is, can they identify pre-snap if Arizona is generating pressure with just 4 rushers? If Arizona is actually getting home with 4, Taylor and McCord have got to immediately find quick outlets and hot answers. Arizona, on the other hand, is just a complete question mark. Whoever ends up under center for the Cardinals really needs to attack light boxes, use condensed formations, and utilize pre-snap motion to force the Packers linebackers to declare their intentions early. A reserve passing game that routinely faces 3rd and 4, that's sustainable. But one that lives in 3rd and 8 is practically dead on arrival.
Honestly, the focus here is completely on the trenches. Green Bay's ability to operate fundamentally hinges on their backup line holding firm. We are keeping a very close eye on left tackle Jordan Morgan and John Williams, who the coaching staff actually noted as a really positive preseason surprise. But let's be real, they're going to be severely tested because Arizona just activated edge rusher Josh Sweat from the PUP list. We don't know his exact snap limit, but his physical presence out there absolutely matters. When you're watching this game, look for structural signals at the line of scrimmage. If you start seeing recurring A-gap leakage right up the middle, or if Green Bay's reserve tackles are losing speed to power battles on the edge, that immediately downgrades the Packers' scoring path and severely limits what they can do offensively.
Conversely, if we look at Arizona, their most viable route to points doesn't involve forcing low-probability contested deep throws down the boundary just because it's a preseason game. Their optimal path to success is highly efficient underneath distribution, followed by some significant yards after the catch. They need to really test Green Bay's rotating defensive backs, who, by the way, are currently in an active, heavily scrutinized corner competition by using bunches and crossers to punish soft zones. The Packers' defense has to counter this by keeping the quarterback contained in the pocket, rallying fast to short throws, and ensuring incredibly clean, wrap-up space tackling. You cannot let a harmless 3-yard checkdown suddenly turn into a 40-yard explosive play.
Section 4. Let's get into special teams and field position.
The number 4. This represents Green Bay kicker Trey Smack's recent 4-for-4 field goal performance against Denver. Now, it's a fantastic stat to build some confidence, but the Packers coaching staff explicitly warned everyone that 2 games is a remarkably tiny sample size to draw any sweeping conclusions from. Still, Green Bay has a stated kickoff approach that really values strategic placement and tight coverage lanes over pure booming distance. You're going to want to keep a close eye on the operation here. Snap-to-hold timing is vital, especially considering Green Bay's long snapper, Matt Oreje, has missed some time recently. Trust me, every fraction of a second in that exchange matters immensely.
On to Section 5. Let's talk live cues and game states.
Here is your chronological progression to watch as the game actually unfolds. In the first quarter, right out of the gate, identify the active quarterbacks and start charting their early down efficiency. If an offense is consistently creating second and manageable situations without defensive penalties just gifting them the yardage, that is a massive green flag. As the game develops into the middle quarters, we look at game states. If the home team, Green Bay, takes an early lead, watch for them to intentionally slow the pace and lean really heavily on the reserve front to force Arizona into long, predictable third downs. Now, if Arizona leads early, you need to evaluate the why. Is it driven by sustainable drive quality and disciplined run fits that are creating negative Packers plays, or was it just a fluke pick six or a muffed punt? Because a lead built on a fluke is practically begging for regression.
Notice how these early leads change the tactical script entirely. A Green Bay lead inherently means Tyrod Taylor or Kyle McCord are operating efficiently on schedule and that the offensive line is successfully holding up against four-man rushes. An Arizona lead, if it's truly sustainable, means their underneath passing game and their advantageous punt coverage are keeping the Packers' backups constantly chasing the game from really bad field position. Ultimately, sustainable, methodical drive quality matters so much more than a single busted coverage that yields a lucky touchdown.
Let's move ahead to the fourth quarter. If we're looking at a one-score, tied game late, go ahead and throw those elite 2025 offensive EPA rankings completely out the window. In a preseason fourth quarter played by guys who are desperately fighting for the final roster spots, a clean field goal operation and an extra 15 yards of net punt field position are literally the most valuable assets on the field. It simply comes down to which reserve unit avoids catastrophic exchange errors or completely unblocked rushers in a highly compressed red zone field.
Finally, Section 6, the model verdict and our analytics disclaimer.
The model actually views this game as an exact coin flip. We're talking a 50% win probability for Green Bay and 50% for Arizona. Why? Well, because the model is heavily discounting Green Bay's massive historical passing edge due to the confirmed options of Jordan Love and those established starters. It meticulously balances Green Bay's much clearer backup quarterback plan against the distinct possibility that Arizona might just play experienced guys like Gardner Minshew or Jacoby Brissett for extended snaps against lower-level defensive units.
So the projected score is deliberately modest. Packers 20, Cardinals 19. This is factoring in just a slight home field advantage and a minor operational adjustment for Green Bay's coaching continuity. We're assuming a roughly ordinary preseason pace here. We'd honestly only raise Arizona's projection if we get confirmed snaps from their experienced quarterbacks, or raise Green Bay's if their reserve line proves early in the first quarter that they can perfectly protect Taylor or McCord.
And that brings us to a vital sports analytics disclaimer. This is a low-confidence preseason forecast, not a market quote. The decisive information is still unavailable.
Because Arizona's inactive list and Friday quarterback rotation are entirely unverified right now, you should honestly simply pass on all pregame bets. Unless a verified rotation announcement creates a clear, actionable mismatch right before kickoff, the uncertainty is simply way too high to risk capital.
Which leaves us with this final thought as you get ready to watch this finale. If the starters are all resting, which reserve unit will execute the tactical blueprint with the cold discipline of a first-team roster? Friday night isn't about the established names on the backs of the jerseys. It is all about the communication in the trenches, the tackling in space, and the operational precision of the men fighting to stay in the league. Watch the A-gaps, watch the checkdowns, and meticulously watch those special teams. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep watching the details, and enjoy the game.